We're learning Tractate Eruvin, chapter 8. The name of the chapter is Ketzad Mishtatfin, page 85, pei hey. Start from Abaye. Amar le Abaye Rabbi Yosef. Abaye wants to establish which of Rabbi Yehuda mentors was the source of the ruling that an adjustment, albeit a slight one, is necessary for drawing water in the case described above. Amar Abaye Rabbi Yosef. Abaye said to Rabbi Yosef, Ha Rabbi Yehuda Ho the Rabbi Yehuda the Shmuel he. This ruling of Rabbi Yehuda that a slight adjustment is necessary to permit drawing of water from a pit, which is between two chatzeres, is Shmuel's ruling. Rabbi Yehuda derived this ruling from the statement made by Shmuel. The Rav, for if it is Rav's ruling, this would be problematic. Omar ein odom v'esal chavero derech avir. Rav said a person cannot restrict his fellow in an area used by him only by way of air. Ein odom v'esal, so a person cannot restrict his fellow in an area used by him only by air. The Gemara examines Abaye's conclusion that Rabbi Yehuda's statement was based on Shmuel. Shmuel meicho, the Shmuel meicho, Shmuel, and if the ruling of Shmuel, from where did Rabbi Yehuda derive it? Will you say that it was derived from the following statement? Oh, Rav Nachman or Shmuel. Rav Nachman said the name of Shmuel Gaga. If a roof is adjacent to Shusarabim, then a permanent ladder leading down from the second story of the roof is needed to render it permissible. The Gemara assumes that the Rishus Harabim does not extend up to the walls of the house, but the impediments were set up to distance the traffic at least 4 tfachim from the houses. Consequently, the Rishus Harabim's use of the roof is by way of air, by throwing objects up to the roof through at least 4 tfachim of horizontal distance. Shmuel's ruling counters Rav's pronouncement that one cannot restrict by way of air. The Gemara counters that Rav Nachman's statement can be interpreted in such fashion that use by way of air is not an issue. Dilma Rav Papa, perhaps Rav Nachman's ruling can be explained like Rav Papa. Now the statement of Shmuel is shown to be the source of Rabbi Yehuda's ruling. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda derived his ruling from this statement of Shmuel. This chotzer puts out a slat of any size and may fill its pails with water. And the other chotzer also puts out a slat of any size and may fill its pails with water. Time of the reason that the chotzer may draw water is because they put out slats. But if they did not put out slats, we would say that a person does restrict his fellow through use by way of air. The Gemara now researches the source of the assumption made above, that Rab holds that one cannot restrict by way of air. And the view stated above to be that of Rav, that one cannot restrict by way of air. From where is it derived? Which statement of Rav indicates that he endorses this concept? Will you say that it was derived from the following comment on a Mishnah? 2 balconies that extend over a body of water and are one above the other. Also, if they made a partition for the upper balcony, but they did not make a partition for the lower balcony, both are prohibited to draw water unless they make a joint Eruvin. Rabuna related the following comment on this Mishnah in Rav's name. This ruling of the Mishnah was taught only in regard to a nearby balcony. But if it was distance 4 tfachim, the upper balcony is permitted and the lower one is prohibited. So if it was distance 4 tfachim, upper one is permitted, the lower one is prohibited. Perhaps this case discussed in the statement of Rav differs from a common case of use by way of air, so that Rav's ruling that a distant balcony does not prove that he accepts the principle that one does not restrict by way of air.
What's this air business?
Just he says if we are neighbors and the only access I have to the courtyard is air access, like somebody that lives on the second floor, can he restrict me if he did not participate in the Eruv? So they are suggesting that it's the opinion of Rav that he cannot restrict by way of air. And seemingly Shmuel is saying that said the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and I was saying it's already Rabbi Yehuda received it probably from Shmuel that he can restrict by way of air. So we're trying to see where is it coming from, and if it really Rav is of the opinion that you cannot restrict by way of air. The only access you have to the yard is air access. If you are living on a fifth floor and he's taking your window, what access is it? Really an access?
It's not access. You got to go through the house.
If you have to come down to the first house, to the bottom house, then it's the only front house that have access really. So
I got that.
It says so. No, he answers the Chayvan the Zeb Zrika v'Shilshul, because since the use of the hole in the upper balcony is for this one, the lower balcony only by means. The upper balcony, for example, can only reach to the lower balcony in two ways: either throwing Zrika v'Shilshul, throwing and lowering, by traversing both horizontal and vertical distances. But this, the upper balcony, the use of the water hole is by lowering alone.
So this guy's going to throw a rope with a bucket
to get water.
Get the water
from
and
the pit.
Slap it back up.
Yeah, this is comparable to the case where a given area is accessible to the one by throwing, but the other through a portal. Elamah, rather the assumption that Rav negates the restrictive power of use by way of air is derived from the following ruling by Rav. Regarding two houses between which there are three ruins. This house may use the ruin close to it by throwing, and the other house may also use the ruin close to it by throwing. But the middle one is prohibited for carrying both houses. So the Gemara has found the source for the assumption that Rav negates the power of restricting by way of air. It now re-examines the premises which underlies Rav's ruling. Yossi Rav Beruna v'kamor lo shmaita. Rav Beruna was sitting and repeating this ruling of Rav, which was just cited by the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Lezer bar beirav Amar Rav Achi. Rabbi Lezer said to him, to Rav Boino, in astonishment, student of Rav's academy, did Rav actually say this? Amar le'ein, he said it. Rav Beruna replied, yes. Ach v'lo ushpizeh Rabbi Lezer, still incredulous. Incredulous.
He doesn't believe it.
Yeah, still incredulous, rejoined, point out to me Rav's quarters, right, so that I can discuss this ruling with him. Achvale, so Rav Beruna pointed out Rav's quarters, meaning he told him where Rav lives.
Right.
So Rav Lozo then appeared before Rav. Omar Mar Hochi. He said to him, did the master say so? Did Rav actually rule that the middle ruin is prohibited, and still rule at the same time that the two ruins next to the houses are permitted, as reported in his name? So you have a house, ruin, right, and another middle ruin. So he says the middle one is out, but right, the one close to the house, okay. Amar le'ein. So he says, yes, that's what I said. But isn't it you that said before, on a different case, if a given area is accessible to the chotzer only by lowering and to the other chotzer only by throwing, both chatzeros are prohibited. So Rav explained his ruling to Rabbi Elazar. Amar lei, Rav responded to Rabbi Elazar, your question is based on a misunderstanding of the circumstance. Do you think that the ruins are positioned one next to the other in a straight line? Do you think that the ruins are positioned one next to the other in a straight line? No. That is not a correct understanding of the circumstances. Rather, my ruling concerns a situation where the ruins positioned like the feet of a tripod. Two of the ruins are arranged one next to the other, one each abutting one of the houses. The middle ruin is behind these two and extends from one house to the other. So above, the Gemara implied that Shmuel takes the position that one does restrict by way of air. The Gemara examines this further. Amar le Rav Papa said to Rav, Lema Shmuel leislei de Rav Dimi. Will you say that Shmuel, who was understood to hold that one does not restrict by way of air, disagrees with Rav Dimi's ruling? Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel. He recounted in Rabbi Yochanan's name an area which does not have the dimensions of 4x4 tefachim, and is situated between Reshus Harabim and Reshus HaYachid. It is permissible for the people of Reshus Harabim and for the people of Reshus HaYachid to adjust their burdens upon it, provided they do not exchange their loads. We learned it before. So it's an area that doesn't have 4x4. You're allowed to, those of Reshus Harabim and those of Reshus HaYachid, allowed to adjust their burdens. Provided they do not exchange their loads. So that they now transfer the load from the Reshus Harabim to an area, to the area, and then from the area to the Reshus Harabim, to Reshus HaYachid. So the Gemara responds that Shmuel indeed accepts Rav Dimi's ruling. He does not accept the concept that use by way of air does not restrict. Nevertheless, he requires that a slat in the case of the water pit, but not regarding the Mokim Petu, this area of less that has less than 4x4, for the following reason. Also, we choose the Oraisa. There, regarding Mokim Petu, the ruling concerns spiritual domains, scriptural domains, biblical domains. Oh, we choose the Rabbon. Here, regarding the water pit, the ruling concerns rabbinical domains. And the sages strengthen their own decrees more than those of the Torah, because biblical decrees, people are very careful with. Rabbinical decrees, people are more lenient, so therefore they strengthen the decrees more. It says in 17, therefore a stricture requiring slats was instituted to strengthen the rabbinical prohibition against carrying between two chatzeros, but was not necessary in the case of the Mokim Petu. The Gemara challenges the assumption of that Rav accepts the principle that one does not restrict by way of air. Did Rav really say so? Does he really accept the principle that one does not restrict by way of air, a position ascribed to him regarding two houses which are on two opposite sides of Reshus Harabim? So it's basically two houses and Reshus Harabim passes between them. Public domain is in between the two houses. Stated, related in Rav's name. Also, Lizruk Mizela Zayd is prohibited to throw objects from one house to the other on the opposite side of Reshus Harabim. Shmuel said you're allowed to. Omar le Rava answered, Avina lav mi ukman demid lechad mitad echad. Have I not already established concerning the circumstances of the case discussed by Rav that one house is tall and one house is low? The target is not on one plane with the thrower. Because of this circumstance, there is concern that sometimes the thrown object will miss the target, roll, and fall into Reshus Harabim, and because of his concern for the object, he will forget and will come to carry it into the Reshus HaYochid, thereby performing scripturally forbidden malacha of carrying from Reshus Harabim to Reshus HaYochid.
So are we saying that if the houses are on the same level, you can't throw because you'll miss, and then it'll go down like this? Or are we saying one?
You have two opinions. First, so the last case is two houses and public domain is in between, right?
Right.
So Rav Abavuna said in the name of Rav, you are not allowed to throw from one side to the other. Shmuel says you are allowed to throw from one side to the other. So why?
Right,
so he says, so Rava responds to Rava, he says, Omar Lei, have I not already established concerning the circumstance of the case discussed by Rav, that one house is tall and one house is low? The target is not on one plane with the thrower. They're not the same, like with the two houses, they're on the same, the same height, the same level. So it says Zimna in the Migandar, because of this circumstance, there is a concern that sometimes the thrown object will miss the target, roll and fall into Reshus Harabim, and because of his concern for the object, he will forget. He will come to carry it into Reshus HaYochid, thereby performing scripturally forbidden malacha of carrying from Reshus Harabim to Reshus HaYochid. This is like this. According to Shmuel, they said you're allowed to throw from one house to the other. It's only when the houses are on the same level. There's less chances of it resting in Reshus Harabim. But if two balconies and the Reshus Harabim in the bottom, there's a chance that maybe the one from on top, throwing it to the one on the bottom, will miss and will fall into Reshus Harabim, and then they'll come and take it.
So it's more about the one that's high and low than the one that's on the same level.
Oh, they ruled in both cases, but it's saying you can't compare the two cases and say because that he ruled in the case of two houses he would rule the same, because in the case of balconies there is one balcony lower than the other. There is a concern that he's going to miss. I don't know if it's balcony. It's more like he says. Because sometimes the concern discussed a house. It says one house is tall and one house is low. In case they're not in the same height. In Eruvin Chatzeros joins all the residents of a chotzer in a symbolic partnership in a single dwelling. The Eruv bread must therefore be placed in one of the dwellings of the chotzer. Shituf Mavois, on the other hand, merges all the residents of the chatzeros of the Mavoi into a symbolic partnership of the chatzeros. The shituf food therefore will be placed in a chotzer. So when it comes to shituf Mavois, it needs to be placed in the chotzer. When it comes to Eruvin Chatzeros, it needs to be placed in one house. The Mishnah outlined the type of building in which an Eruv may be placed. The Gemara will explain how this affects the rule of placing a shituf. If one place is Eruv in a gatehouse, portico, or a gallery, Eino Eruv, it is not a valid Eruv. Adol Shom, and one who lives there in one of these, Eino Yisraelov, does not restrict the other residents of the chotzer from carrying. So meaning it's not considered a dwelling. So if somebody lives there, he doesn't restrict anybody. If he's not participating in the Eruv Beis HaTev, Beis HaBokov, Beis HaItzim, Beis HaTzoris. If the Eruv was placed in a straw shed, barn, woodshed, storehouse, in the chotzer, Areza Eruv, this is a valid Eruv. Adol Shom, one who lives there, we are considering it important, meaning he can restrict other residents from carrying if he did not contribute to the Eruv. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, if the owner retains a holding there, he retains the right to store some of his belongings in his tenant's quarters. He does not restrict the chotzer because the entire chotzer is considered the domain of the owner and the tenants are viewed as his guests. So if you have a big shed in the backyard and you decided you're renting it out to a friend, needs a place to live, so and you're telling them, I'm going to still use part of the shed for my storage, then he's not restricting. But if you don't have any use for the shed and only your tenant is living there, at that point he restricts you if he doesn't participate in the Eruv. So you really have the Mishnah has two cases so far. If you place Eruv in a gatehouse, portico, gallery, it's not an Eruv, and you're not restricting anybody. And then you have a case of straw shed, barn, wood shed, or storehouse. It is considered Eruv. If somebody lives there, you restrict the other residents from using the Eruv. If he's not participating.
Right, so he screws everybody.
But if the owner of the shed has still
a
holding, meaning he's still storing things there, then the tenant there does not restrict.
So because it's the owner's error that counts.
Right. Amar Rav Yehuda, Abrei de Rav Shmuel Bashel, Kol Mokem Shamru Adar Shom Ein Ha'isa. Wherever the sages said about a structure that one who lives there does not restrict, so if you place your Eruv in such a place, it's not an Eruv. If it doesn't restrict, meaning it's not a good place, and you can't put your Eruv chutz, except in one case, except for individual gatehouse. The gatehouse serves only a single family, and Eruv may be placed there, despite the fact that if someone lives in that gatehouse, he would not restrict and would not need to contribute to the Eruv. So Shar Yochid, so it says, if the gatehouse serves only a single family, then the Eruv may be placed there. But it's still, despite the it would not restrict. So you can put the Eruv there, but it would not restrict. So this is an exclusive case. And wherever the sages said about a structure, don't put an Eruv there, but one may place a shituf there. Except for the Mavoi area itself, where even the shituf may not be placed. Shitufim Mavois, it says in 34, merges the Mavois resident into one chotzer. Consequently, it need not be placed in a dwelling. The only requirement regarding its placement is that it be in a secure place. Okay, my kamashma. What is Rav Yehuda informs us? Tanina, we have already learned in the Mishnah. If one places his Eruv, a gatehouse, portico, or gallery, and Eruv, it is not a valid Eruv. It's not a good Eruv. B'shituf mevois, maybe it's good. It's good. But as a shituf, it would be valid on place in these areas. So both rules of Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, are evident from the Mishnah. Why did he state them? The Gemara answers that while these rules could be deduced from the Mishnah, the exception to these rules could not. It was necessary for Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, to inform us about individuals' gatehouse and about the Mavoi area, the Leitanan, whose laws were not taught in the Mishnah. The Gemara cites support for the rule that a shituf may be placed in areas not fit for an Eruv. Understand? You can put a shituf, but to make a Mavoi permissible to carry, but you cannot put the Eruv, meaning the Eruv is more strict than shituf Mavois. Places that are disqualified for Eruv, Chatzeros, would be valid for shituf Mavois. Tainanam Yachi. We learned in a Baisa as well. If someone places his Eruv in a gatehouse, portico, gallery, or a chotzer or mavoi, a razor Eruv, it is a valid Eruv. the Gemara points out that the language of this Baisa must be corrected. But we learned in our Mishnah regarding an Eruv placed in a gatehouse, portico, or gallery, it is not a valid Eruv. Say in the Baisa, this is a valid Shituf. Although an Eruv Chatzeus is not valid when placed in one of these buildings, a Shituf Mevois may be placed there. This confirms the statement of Yehuda, the son of Shmuel Bar Shila. The Gemara now questions the last ruling of the Baisa, which stated that Shituf may be placed in the Mavoi. Shituf Mavoi Leminta. Shituf is not secured in a Mavoi and should therefore be invalid if left there. The Gemara therefore means Shituf Mavoi. You can't put the Shituf in the Mavoi itself. Saying the Baisa that
Mavoi is like the alleyway.
yes.
All right. And
But it has a connection to Shus Rabim.
Right.
You have to put Olechi, Koiro, right, to make
Right. Okay. So
and Shituf is the actual Eruv. We're just calling it Shituf.
even they were talking about the box of matzah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's different because you're trying to, with Shituf Mevois, is you're trying to enable all those who have access to
Right.
the
So everybody
Mavoi.
got to put a piece of matzah in,
Yeah.
or declare that that's that.
But in a way, what's the difference between Mavoi and Chotzer? It seems like the Mavoi has access to Shus Rabim, and the Chotzer is not necessarily. The Chotzer is just a bunch of houses have access to a Chotzer.
I remember where my grandmother used to live.
In Brooklyn, you have a bunch of houses in the
St.
back. They got
St. John's
alleyway.
Place. So the whole, you could look and there was a big chutzner, you could say.
But that's a Chotzer that residents have access
Right.
to.
And they strung the laundry,
Right.
they did the laundry that way back in the day. Had fresher laundry that way, by the way, but that's not a story from one.
Makes it hard. In Israel, they still do it, but it's not as soft. The sun makes it dry.
But it smells fresher than, you win and you lose, but
Yeah.
I remember those days, okay.
A group of neighbors who were eating a meal together before the Shabbos began. Kodesh and Shabbos, Kodesh and Shabbos, they became sanctified on them. Night fell and the Shabbos began while they were sitting there, without their having joined in an Eruv or Shituf. They may rely on the bread that is on the table for an Eruv, and others say that they may rely on it for a Shituf. Amar Rabba. There is no dispute between these two rulings. Here, where the bread may be used as an Eruv, it refers to people who are eating in a house. While here, where the bread may be used as a Shituf, it refers to people eating in a Chotzer. So we have Mesubim B'Bayit, Mesubim B'Chotzer. Where the bread may be used as an Eruv, refers to people eating in a house. Where the bread may be used as a Shituf, it refers to people eating in a Chotzer. We learned in Baita which supports your explanation. Is placed in the Chotzer, Shituf Mevois b'Mavoi. Shituf Mevois is placed in a Mavoi, Avinan. And when learning this Baita, we asked, can it be that Eruv Chatzeros is placed in the Chotzer? Question mark. Unless Eruv is Shar Sadom place. An Eruv, we just learned, if one places an Eruv in a gatehouse, portico, gallery, Ein Eruv, it is not a valid Eruv because it is not in a dwelling. Clearly, it may not be placed in the open Chotzer. You should not put your Eruv in an open Chotzer. Say instead, Eruv Chatzeros is placed in a house in the Chotzer. Shituf Mevois b'Chotzer Shemavoi, while a Shituf Mevois is placed in a Chotzer of the Mavoi. This supports Rava's ruling. It says in 45, the Eruv must be placed in a house of the Chotzer being merged, not of a different one. While so that makes sense. While the Shituf may be placed in a Chotzer of that mavai. Those who hold that a shituf may not be placed in a house, understand this literally. Shituf may be placed only in a chotzer. Most Rishonim, however, allow a shituf to be kept in a house. They would translate that the shituf may also be stored in the chotzer. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im yeshon tfisas yad. Yehuda says, if the owner retains a holding there, that's regarding the shed, a tenant does not restrict the others from carrying. What does it mean, holding? For example, the chotzer of a guy named Bunyas, the son of Bunyas, who owned several houses, which he allowed others to use. His utensils were left in the buildings even when others were living there. So also lekami the Rabbi, he came to visit Rabbi. Omar lehu, upon seeing him, Rabbi said to those present, Panu mokim leven me'amon, make room for the men of 100 monim. What does it mean? It says mon is equal to 100 zuz or dinars. A man worth 10,000 zuz.
Big bucks.
Make room for a man of 100 monim. Also in the Shachrino, another man then came to visit Rabbi. Omar Lehu, this man, this time Rabbi said to those present, Panu mokim v'masai monim, make room for the man of 200 monim. Omar lefano Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yisi, Rabbi Oviv Shalzeh, my teacher, this man's father, Bunyas, the father of Bunyas, Yesh lo elos finas bayom, v'chaneg lo elos b'bosho, owns 1,000 sheep at sea, and corresponding to them 1,000 cities on land. Cities, imagine.
Yeah.
Why did you refer to him by the lesser title? Omar lei, Rabbi answered, when you reach his father, tell him, do not send him before me wearing these clothes. The clothing Ben Bunyas had worn did not reflect his wealth, which caused Rabbi to misjudge his financial position. This is an interesting statement. It says, Rabbi Mechabed Ashirim, Rabbi would show respect to wealthy people. Right. It says in number 3, this refers to wealthy people who help the poor. Well, relates in Rava Bar Mari's explanation below. Rabbi Akiva Eiger cites the following explanation of Rabbi's practice of honoring rich people. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, Rabbi himself was both the great Talmid Chacham of his generation, as well as a man of great wealth. He wished, however, to avoid deriving any personal benefit or honor from his Torah accomplishments. He thus made a point of honoring the deserving wealthy, so that people honoring him would be seen to be honoring him for his wealth rather than for his Torah greatness. It's a very interesting point of Akiva Eiger.
I think you have the Sikha book in English for the Parsha, and then this one he was going over, that kind of came up in that Sikha.
Yeah. But according to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, he didn't want people to respect him for his Torah knowledge, so he says, look, I'm giving honor to the wealthy, those who are deserving it, because they're doing chesed with the poor, the philanthropy,
right.
Those who are involved with philanthropy. And this way, if anybody would come to honor him, they would not honor him for his Torah knowledge. He didn't want to derive any pleasure from that, but they would honor him for his wealth. Anyhow, so it says, Rabbi Mechabed Ashirim, Rabbi Akiva Mechabed Ashirim. Rabbi Akiva would honor, respect the poor also. It says Rabbi Akiva, in number 4, it says Rabbi Akiva actually preceded Rabbi by 2 generations. The Gemara mentions Rabbi first, since an incident involving him had just been discussed. Rav Mori expounded in regard to the following verse: May he, the king, sit forever before God, appoint kindness and truth, that they may preserve him. Homiletically, this can be interpreted as follows: when is the world properly settled before God, bisman shechesed ve'emes man yitzeru, when there are kindness and ample provisions for the poor, this preserves the world. So it's actually teaching us a lesson before elections that we need to have some kind of a system that would help the weak and poor.
We should.
If
Nobody's
we,
arguing with that.
well, some say that it's a socialist state
No,
if
but
you're helping the
no,
poor,
Listen, it's different between being
creating dependency.
as taxes or as taking out of your pocket.
Well, you think these wealthy people didn't take out of their pocket
They
and they
did.
gave the poor?
They did. These things.
Right.
So why do you have to hold a gun to their head? That's all I'm saying.
No. You're saying that if we create a system, America has a system
Right.
that helps the poor. So isn't it being criticized by the Republicans that it creates dependency and this and that?
Okay, you know what?
It's true.
Me and you have a great example. We have, look what's, his legs, he sits there. I'm not,
But he doesn't get anything from the country, from the
he gets
government.
from us, he gets from you.
I know, but not from the government.
I know.
Why the government doesn't help
Because he
him?
didn't apply for it anyway. That's
Yeah.
another story. I mean, he could get.
No, so-
he
but-
didn't
but-
even try.
Do you argue that the system should be in place for these
The
people?
system, but it's the question is, you know how much. Okay, I used to work for Social Security Disability for 30 years. Here I am because I'm getting a pension from Social Security Disability. You had 300 or 400 people there, all making nice money, and all right, whatever the disabled got, they got. But but I'm taking off the top.
Right.
So you have all this.
No, because you have
administration
pension.
Yeah, no, but
no,
I'm saying I'm getting all the administrative cost of doing it this way doesn't benefit. I mean, if I take out $1, and give it to someone, or I say, okay, I give it to an organization, I give them the same dollar, and I give them this guy 10 cents instead.
right, exactly. Yeah.
That's the problem I'm trying to say. That's the
Well, obviously, giving directly to the poor benefits the poor much more.
right.
But I'm just saying that they need to have.
They
It
have
says,
to have a system.
when is the world properly settled before God? When there are kindness and ample provisions for the poor, this preserves the world.
Right. It doesn't have to be through the government. I mean, it doesn't have to be with the whole bureaucracy doing it. It could be.
The rich, it says in number 7, the rich who provide for the poor ensure the preservation of the world.
Therefore,
they deserve respect.
The ones that quietly go and do it. There's a lot of people.
Right.
I'm sure there's a lot of rich people that quietly do their thing. This is beautiful. Nobody has to know. Nobody has to have a dinner for them. Nothing.
Yeah, the Gemara now returns to Abuda's ruling regarding a homeowner who allowed someone else to use his property but retained the right to keep belongings there. So first guy was Bunyas Bar Bunyas. Rabbi Bar Chana Omar Kigoin Yosich Machesh. For example, the peg of a plow, even if the homeowner retained the right to keep only a single tool in the house, he is viewed as living there, and his tenant, guest, does not restrict the right to carry in the chotzer. Amar Nachman Tona Devei Shmuel. Following Weisse was taught in the Academy of Shmuel, Dovointel B'Shabbos, if the item which the homeowner is keeping in the house is something which may be moved on the Shabbos, or Yisir, the tenant of the house restrict the chotzer, as if that item had not been in the house. Dovo sheino nital b'Shabbos, if the item is something which may not be moved on the Shabbos, Einoi, so the tenant does not restrict. So what is Rav Nachman telling us in the Academy of Shmuel? So something which may be moved on the Shabbos, the tenant of the house restrict the chotzer. If the item which the homeowner is keeping in the house is something which may be moved on Shabbos. Says in number 10, it is not muktzeh, an item which may not be moved on the Shabbos, it is not muktzah, an item which may not be moved on Shabbos. Okay. Though in the Shabbos, something which may be moved on the Shabbos, oiser, he, the tenant of the house, restrict the chotzer. As if the item had not been in the house.
That's like they had a marshal on the paragraph above about the peg of a plow. So if you have the peg of the plow in the shed with the tenant, the tenant can't restrict. This is what I'm kind of.
No, the question is, I'm saying, looking at the logic of it, it says if it's something that may be moved on the Shabbos, it says also the tenant of the house restricts the chotzer, as if the item had not been in the house.
But if it was a muktzah item, like
the Shabbos, if the item is something which may not be moved on the Shabbos, the tenant does not restrict. The logic of it doesn't make sense to me, because in my mind, if you can move it on Shabbos, that means the owner has access to the house, to the shed, and he might come and take it. 1 second. So if he takes it, then he no longer has anything in the house. That's the reason. So if he comes and takes it, because he's allowed to take it,
right?
So then he doesn't have anything left there.
Right.
If he doesn't have any belonging left in the house,
right,
then the tenant restricts. But if he cannot take it, because muktzah, so meaning the entire Shabbos he has something belonging to him in the shed, so therefore he still remains the owner of the shed, and therefore the tenant does not restrict if he doesn't participate in the
So if he has the peg or the plow, that's
right.
That's where they came from. Okay, it's going to continue.
If the owner has tevel or he has metal bars in the apartment or anything which may not be moved on Shabbos, the tenant does not restrict the chotzer. Welcome to you.
We'll start the mission tomorrow. You know what? I just thought about something this week. Now, if Laser goes and gets a regular job,